What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to Unit 5.2. We're doing Fighting of World War I. Quick little refresher. 5.1 was all about the causes of World War I, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism. The spark was the Archduke of Austria-Hungary being assassinated, leading to World War I because of the alliance systems and everyone declaring war on everyone else. Let's get into the war and what it looks like. This is what we refer to as the first modern war. The war that's fought in World War I is a lot different than previous wars, and it's a lot different than a lot of things that we've seen. So the first thing that really makes it different and what separates World War I from a lot of wars is we are going to have what is called a total war. And by total war, it means that it's not just the people fighting. It's not just the soldiers who are fighting on what are called the fronts or the areas where the fighting is going on. Everyone is expected to be involved in World War I. And when we get to World War II, you can see the same thing. Everyone's expected to be involved in World War II. And what I mean by total war is there's really three characteristics or a couple characteristics here. Number one is the colonial people who have been imperialized or oppressed people in certain countries. For example, African Americans in the United States who in the South still don't have the right to vote as of World War I, are going to be asked to participate and to help fight. The colonial people, the people who have been imperialized that we talked about in Unit 4, are going to be promised their independence if they help participate in the war. So, for example, in India, the British say, if you help us fight in the war, if you send soldiers to fight in the war, we will give you your independence when this war is done. And they say the same thing to multiple people around the world. For example, in Nigeria, and we have Australia here, we have a group of Harlem Hellfighters, which are from Harlem in New York, who volunteer to help in World War I. So these oppressed people are kind of promised things if they participate and if they help out. Just an FYI, they are not going to get it, which is going to lead to problems after World War I. But more on that at another time. So number one, colonial people are going to be asked to participate. The second reason why we have this total war and everyone is being involved is factories are going to switch from producing factory goods, textiles, and parts for example, cars or railroads or buildings. And now they're going to be asked to focus specifically on making goods for the military. And because so many men are going off to fight in this war, women are going to be asked to, instead of being at home and taking care of the kids and child rearing or working in the textile factory, we're going to ask you to work in the factory to make guns, ammunition, tank parts, whatever it might be. And we're going to ask. In World War II, which we'll eventually get to, is you might have that vision of Rosie the Riveter, who is a fictional character who was asked to work in the factories. And that's similar here in World War I, where women are going to be asked to join the workforce. Also, if you're at home and on the home front is like people who aren't going off to war, they're going to be reducing food consumption. So the idea is in your house, don't buy as much food, don't eat as much food, so we can take that extra food and make sure that our soldiers who are fighting have enough. In some cases, you can really have what is called rationing, meaning that you get a ticket and you can only buy so many loaves of bread or so much sugar or so many, I don't know, things of flour each month or each week. And that way we reduce what we're eating at home. And then we have enough to feed the soldiers who are working on the front. So one last thing about total war is we also have something called propaganda. And ultranationalism. Propaganda can be good or bad. It's usually trying to convince somebody of something that you believe in and that you want them to believe in. And in this case, governments around the world are going to use propaganda to try and convince people to support the war. You can't fight a war and have people die if people don't buy into the war. Because if people see too many deaths or people don't believe in the war that you're fighting, they're going to turn against the government. And remember, going back to the Enlightenment, we have what's called consent of the governed, where people give permission for the government to rule. And if they don't believe in what the government's doing, they're going to vote them out of office or they're not going to support it. So propaganda is used to convince people to support the war and people to join the war. So this is going to lead to ultranationalism. So in some ways, we're going to depict our enemy as, for example, here's the U.S. Army. We're going to depict the Germans as guerrillas or as animals. And it's going to lead to ultranationalism, where we, the U.S., feel superior to the Germans, and we make fun of the Germans and we portray the Germans certain ways, mostly incorrect and factually not right, but it gets people to support the war effort. So again, we have colonial people, we have people fighting or working in the factories to produce goods, reducing food consumption, propaganda, and ultranationalism. That is our total war. That's what's going on the home front and not at the war or where it is, but what's going on in the war, where people are actually fighting, is there's going to actually be two areas, and we'll talk about this more in class, but there's two areas where, or fronts where the war is going to be fought. One is on the Western Front, and that's on the border of France and Germany. They're going to literally dig holes called trenches, about a desk or two wide and about 6, maybe 5, 10, 6 feet deep, and you're going to hide out in these trenches. And then on the other side, about 100 yards away, is another trench where your enemy is. And sometimes you run out and you try and attack the trench, and then sometimes you retreat back into your trench. And that's how this war is fought, just in trenches, at least on the Western Front. On the Eastern Front, it's a lot longer. It's colder. There's less trenches. We're really fighting over small towns. For the most part, this war is not going to move much in terms of how much land either side is taking. And it's really a lot of what are called stalemates, where we're fighting back and forth and nothing is really happening outside of people dying. So these are going to be the two areas of thought. Again, we'll talk more about this in class, but this trench is one of the big pieces of World War I, which we'll get to. Death totals in terms of this are really horrible and really staggering and significant. If you look at this, we have 1.3 million are going to die in France. And another 4.2 million wounded. That's a 73% casualty rate. That means 3 out of every 4 people who went off to war from France were either wounded or killed, which is insane, absolutely insane numbers. Russia had 1.7 million die, which is one of the highest casualty rates outside of Germany. They had a 76% casualty rate as well. So 1.7 dead, 4.9, 5 million wounded. Horrible. This is the Allied side. And here is our Central Powers side. Germany, 1.7 million. I know these are a lot of numbers. 4.2 million wounded, 64% casualty rate. And you can see Austria-Hungary here. 9 out of every 10 people who went off to war were either killed or wounded, which is horrifically awful. The reason why Japan, Italy, and U.S. are so low is they don't join until later in the war, which is why their casualty rates and everything are a little bit lower. But that's this whole piece of this. And the reason why these rates are so high, the reason why so many people are going to be killed or wounded compared to past wars, more people die in World War I than I believe almost every other war up to this point in history, is because of the modern technology, because of the Industrial Revolution. We have a lot better inventions that are going to lead to greater kill rates, essentially. We're going to have tanks, which are going to be used to get through brush and can shoot things. We have airplanes. Airplanes aren't dropping bombs yet. They're just flying over. Flamethrowers, grenade launchers. I mean, these are some nasty things. German, what are called U-boats, Unterseeboots, which is just another word in German for submarines. Machine guns, which are going to be the biggest or most deadliest weapon that is invented, that is used. And then we also have the Germans are going to invent poison gas. You can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, and it can lead to some horrifically awful stuff. So you can see the dog here with the gas mask on. So because of all these, we're going to see an increased rate. We'll talk about a lot more about this stuff in class, but just kind of a quick overview on total war, where the war is fought, and why so many people are going to die. You have any questions, you write it down. You let me know. Hopefully you took notes on this, because if you didn't and I check it, no es bueno. All right, I'm out.